On this episode of AV Week, Extron's NAV series gets government certified. Also, Crestron and Microsoft team up for a Teams scheduling panel. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 486, recorded Friday, December 11th, 2020. Silver Linings.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Sure, sound extraordinary.
and by Crestron.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information this week, first and foremost, a young lady that got to hang out with Megan Dutta, not with me, but with Megan Dutta during the AV Network Nation event. Charmaine Torella from Barracks. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Nice to be back. Hi, Tim. Hi, everybody.
And you can still see Charmaine and the incredible words of wisdom that she delivered during the AV Network Nation event. If you go to avnetworknation.com, you can watch all of that for the next 30 days. And if you watch all the stuff, you get 4.75 RUs. So that's at least worth, what was it, 4 or 5 hours? So yeah, absolutely. Also with us, a industry veteran who has been around the block once or twice. His name is Brad Grimes. Welcome, sir.
Good to be back. Good to see you guys.
Absolutely. And last but not least, a young man I've been trying to get on for at least 3 or 4 years, Dana Corey from AVWeek. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for the young man. That's nice to know there.
Here's the thing. When you get to a certain age, darn near everybody's a young man, because I may not look it because I've got the hair, but it's getting there. I'll have my AARP card in about 3 or 4 years. So let's just put it that way. All right, let's kick this off here. First story comes to us from our friends actually over at AVNetwork.com. Extron NAV series has met the federal government cryptographic requirements, also known as NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology Guidelines for FIPS. Unfortunately, the article does not define what FIPS is, and I can't remember off the top of my head, so Bradford will have to beat me up for that one. So from Casey Hall, Extron, quote unquote, we are excited to announce that our NAV Pro AV over IP series meets the FIPS 140-2 standard, ensuring that sensitive data is protected. Dana, I want to start with you on this because you are our manufacturer on this call. Walk me through, and I'm not going to ask for all the steps and stuff like that, but how important is it from a manufacturer standpoint that you get government certified? We're talking about the U.S. government here, but obviously different governments have different regulations and different standards. But to sell to the government and to be able to sell into that channel, how important is it to get things like this certification?
Yeah, and this is obviously really impressive. Another notch in Extron's belt for sure. I have to speak from our perspective in the display side. We look at two things, especially the government. One is country of origin as a more compliant or friendly nation to that, and we pride ourselves in that part of it as well. So one part of it is just where you manufactured for reasons related to political and security, of course, security being the highest part. Second part would be the compliance around the operating system which you use. In this case, we use primarily the Windows-based program because of the security it offers, right? And of course, within Windows or Microsoft, they have certain GCC and also DoD parameters of security that they deploy, and of course, that's a big part of the government. So, I spent my time yesterday with one agency in particular, and that development and that security is the utmost concern, right? Because sharing and data and where it's saved and not saved and what they can have is vital. And the problem that I faced yesterday was that, of course, in these situations, the government can be behind the times a little bit on the technology, especially on the software side, because it hasn't been approved yet. So the things commercially we see available that are like, we want that, and then we get there and find out, well, you don't have that yet because it's not been approved. So always that fine battle there. But
really quickly on that, is that more along the lines of getting, let's say, firmware, right, approved through the process channel, where you have to explain to your users, the folks that are contacting you, that, hey, your folks have it, we're just waiting for them to approve it? Is that the process there?
Yeah, not so much firmware. This would be more in the, let's just take an example, Office 365 or Microsoft, for example. there is a commercially readily available that is secure because it's Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the government secured version, which takes a little more time to go through that process. So yes, many times, like yesterday, just a matter of fact, it was, we want that. And it's like, yeah, not yet. Maybe soon, but it's for the right reasons, right? It's about that security. And that's the only way to do that is to administer that kind of program that can lag sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't, right? I'll give an example. We talk about Zoom and Zoom's some of the security stuff this year. Now look at Zoom being used on different government calls. Clearly, they've addressed it. So there are ways when they need it that they can move fast. So
yeah. All right, Charmaine. So I've got a question. When you're talking with your clients, and I'm not going to ask you which government agencies you work with because one of us will get in trouble, and probably both. How important is this as you're going into a system and you and your team are helping to design it to make sure that some of these boxes are checked for a government certification?
Oh, it's absolutely important. I mean, depending on the agency itself, right? Certain agencies can communicate outside, origin United States, outside into another place, or the origin of that office is outside of the US. So this is very, depending on the agency, this is, very critical, especially if they're dealing with international, communications and data going across borders. So for them, this is very important. Not a lot of products for like the Extron, this certification, this compliance, I should say, can do that. And they look for that and they vet their products out as best as they can to ensure there's compliance to security, especially considering what's been happening in the last 4 years with collaboration in the government sector across the board, right? Since the issue in 2015 with a candidate, said former candidate, where now they are tasked with really making sure this is, something they have to constantly address and roll it out throughout, as many agencies as possible. So that's been a focus since then for the last 4 or 5 years. And so for them, it's probably going to ramp up now in the next couple of years. And they have a lot of capital invested in making sure this happens. So that's another thing to note. A lot of federal agencies have capital that's from here to 2026 that they're going to utilize to ensure that their systems have certain compliances and securities there. So there is a revenue pool that integrators need to think about going forward as to, everyone's thinking about how to pivot after COVID. Government is that way, and products like this can help you do that and do that pivot if you start getting into it right now.
Really quickly, Charmaine, I want to hit on something you said. You said through 2026, these government agencies have this budget. If you know, and if you can say, and if you can't, that's fine. What is it that they hope to accomplish? Is it through the 2026? And the reason I'm asking is you're talking about a 5-6 year time, depending on we're at the end of 2020 here. Is it simply getting folks remote? Is it securing? Is it shoring up security? What is it that they're hoping to accomplish with this budget and with that timeline?
I'm hoping to shore up security, which is the main thing. It appears sometimes, and we'll just go to federal agencies within this country. It sometimes would appear in the past that these federal agencies had secure ways of securing their collaboration technology. And that's not always the case depending on the agency. That's pretty as much as far as I can go with that.
That works. That absolutely works. No,
and with the 2016 campaign with the email situation, there's a lot more of those types of situations that do happen that the public is not always privy to in other agencies.
Right.
As a result, funding was in a lot of areas set aside to shore that up. And also a lot of it is outdated. A lot of people don't realize that, a lot of it is outdated because federal agencies have a problem shifting systems to something new unless it has a certain level of compliance and security. So thus they stick with what they know has already been approved and certified that yes. And for a while, they're going to keep running with it until they find that, unicorn, that magical unicorn of a product that's going to have everything that old product had. So you have a lot of agencies right now that are sitting on, older product, and they're becoming obsolete. Once they break down, it becomes harder to fix, to replace. So they really have to move forward now, and they have to move forward to something that will have that security and compliance, because the old stuff, they're hanging on to it, right? They're stitching it by a thread and taping it up and keeping it going because it has that compliance. But it's becoming obsolete. So that's the main reason, because, that's what federal agencies for the most part will do. As long as it works, as long as we can get it fixed, until there's something that gives me all these things, we're not going to upgrade anything. And that's very different than enterprise. Enterprise, is very different in that aspect. They will upgrade more often than a federal agency will.
No, absolutely. That's why the IRS is still running on punch cards. So
yeah,
that was a joke, kids. I hope it got not. All right, Mr. Grimes, you've been covering this industry for a minute here. Walk me through the last 20 years of, 20 years ago-ish is when a lot of folks will say the first RJ45 connector was put on the back of an piece of AV gear. And we've had our share of ups and downs and hits and misses and, pieces of code being dropped into touch panels in the war room of the White House. I don't know who did that, but, somebody did. It was AMX, Brad, before you think too hard. So, walk me through this process and how this has evolved over the last 20 years from nothing ever being on the network. So we really weren't concerned ourselves with security to suddenly, if it's a piece of AV gear going into a system, it inherently is going on the network. And so suddenly products like this, like the Extron piece, does need to have, certain levels of certification to even be considered for certain jobs.
Is this still the FIPS question? Because I was going to stand in for Bradford and tell you what FIPS was.
Go ahead. Yes.
No.
This is the FIPS question.
And you mentioned 20 years. That's about as old as FIPS is. I mean, FIPS is one of the pillars of information security and on government networked equipment. And pretty much it's for the cryptographic modules in the equipment. You pretty much need to do it. You need to have it to sell into the government. But as more AV equipment sits on a network, on a government network, and has security implications, it needs to meet these certifications, because a lot of times when you're a procurement officer for a federal agency, compliance is key, and it's easy to tick off. It's easy for me to turn around and say, is it FIPS compliant? And if it's not, then I can close the door right there. And fortunately, companies like Extron, Crestron, others have been, taking the initiative to get their equipment FIPS certified, so that they can say yes in those situations. But yes, in the government, being compliant, meeting the NIST standards, the information processing standards of NIST is critical to selling into the government. And so if you're on that list, then you can sell your products into a lot of these agencies. FIPS 142, which Extron got, we were saying before we went on the air, is about to become FIPS 143. I don't know what that means, if everybody has to recertify all their equipment in the coming years, but yeah, it's an important step for anybody who wants to sell in the government, and I applaud Extron for doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually will be something to watch as FIPS kind of flips to the next generation. From commercial integrator Crestron and Microsoft have released a Teams room scheduling panels, which is interesting because these Teams room scheduling panels is based on and built on the new 70 series product line of Crestron that they just released about a month or so ago. Charmaine, let's walk through this really quickly as you're talking to clients and getting folks ready to get back to work. How important are some of these integrated systems where AV folks are integrating parts and pieces with, whether it's Teams or it's, Google Meets or these other software applications that people are already using while they're working from home and as they go back to work?
Oh, very important. I know in the beginning it was integrating with Zoom, right? Zoom was easy, it was there, it was quick. The security issues, going back to security, were issues and still are to some respect. In addition, Zoom is not exactly so much of an enterprise client as Microsoft Teams is, right? You can take Teams, it'll tie into your Exchange and everything, 365, whatever, SharePoint, and it interoperates very easily within your enterprise environment. With Zoom, it's not always that simple, depending on your environment. So this from Crestron is I'm glad to see that they did it. It's very critical because a lot of enterprises in the beginning, out of necessity, ran and said, okay, we'll do Zoom. But now they're thinking long-term and how to structure that better. And they're like, well, we have Teams, we're turning on Teams, we're going to Teams, and people can access Teams virtually and remotely as well and not be in the office. And it ties into Exchange, and then we can get a lot of data and information. Let's go and use Teams instead. You can still have your Zoom, but Teams is going to be the main client that we're going to use to navigate this hybrid situation, right? For in-person, physical boardroom and virtual conferencing. So it's very important for a lot of integrators to understand that. I know everyone wants to think about Zoom rooms, and that's great, but a lot of enterprise clients already have Teams. They're not going to go and put an additional investment in some other client that's going to be disparate from their standards that they have already. They're going to go with what they have, and that's what we're going to work with. And Teams is right there. So just turn it on, we go with it, and it works with everything that we have so far and interoperates with Skype and everything. It's easier, it's better, it's more reliable. They know it. Their teams are more familiar with the Microsoft suite. That's what they're doing. So this is this is a good step, because now more and more what's happening is clients are now going, okay, we're going to go to Teams now. And they started out with Zoom at the top of Q2 of this year. Now, like, okay, now can you make this team rooms now? And can we we have a Polycom. Can we connect the Polycom meetings with the team meetings? So that is a thing. I'm happy that this happened. So it gives me some more conversations to have with the clients. Good,
absolutely. Yeah, it'll be interesting as folks kind of get back to work. Brad, I want to bring you in this but one of the things that I find interesting is the number of what I'm going to call back to work during COVID features. One is the fact that there's occupancy sensors built into this thing, and those sensors will sense how many employees are in a room and then be able to tell somebody coming in, hey, there's too many people here, obviously based on what you set up or your clients set up. In addition to that, you can find nearby rooms, have stuff like RFIDs for key cards and stuff like that. What other features are you seeing, whether it's in this product or in other folks that are releasing things now, that could be considered COVID or pandemic or healthy or safety measures, whether that's a poly system that can again do facial not facial recognition but human counting for a room, or it's like this system where it's able to kind of point you to a new room?
I mean, clearly, contactless things will be important as we move forward. I suspect that, and I don't know if the feature was in there yet, that you'll be able to walk up to a Crestron panel and talk to it and ask it something rather than have to touch it or things like that. More detecting more detecting people in front. And I think there was proximity detection when you walk up to it. That it it can start to function and it can start to execute everything. I mean, to me, the most important thing is that it is built on Teams. I mean, I sort of it's fun to be in this situation where the first time Microsoft showed up at an Infocom, corners of the industry sort of rolled their eyes and chuckled and whatnot, and then companies like Dana's were really early on, integrating Teams functionality into their products. Last time we all got together, which would have probably been Amsterdam, a guy I respect a lot stood in front of an audience and said, if in the AV industry, if you're not working with Teams, you're not working. I mean, it's just, so we're at this stage now where this platform, this dominant collaborative platform, which is tied into so much of how people work and have been working for decades, is a big part of what we do. So I suspect Crestron's far from the last one to hook their wagon onto to the Team Star, and I think that's great for all of us.
All right. Dana, I actually wanted to end with you because of you guys' integration with it. Talk for a second, as much as you can, about working with Teams and integrating that into a product that you guys developed, but that obviously leverages a lot of the feature sets of Teams.
Yeah, I think one thing it's an opinion, but one thing to possibly recognize here is, first part is what we accomplished from a UC perspective this year, unfortunately during a COVID, was our users went from first graders to high schoolers in video. The word Zoom is now known worldwide as his Teams. So what would have taken us years to accomplish, we took care of it in months. So that's a little bit of the silver lining in a very difficult time. So as they return to work, and I think what we're seeing here is we're going to be in a year of race to innovate. If Google and Teams and Cisco and Zoom are all fighting for users, and we're seeing this adoption, it's going to be a wonderful year for us and our integrators, right, and our end users, because the race to fight and things like this, what Teams is doing. Another kind of point to Teams, they're hosting CES, the largest trade show in the world, 250,000 attendees on Teams for that event, right? Amazing, right? So just the beginning of the innovation. And so back to the point we hear with Crestron is having the in-room devices that are Teams enabled and working together are critical, and being able to address the return to work phases. The beauty here is our people are going to come back smarter than when they left, honestly, with more expectations to do more in rooms. Now, we may say it's what they should have been doing years ago because we've been in the industry, but for them, there'll be leaps. Like, for example, annotating, right? Content sharing. I mean, things that we've been saying for years are now going to be pushing forward. And the beauty of it is, especially for us as a Teams partner, is we don't have to be the loudest voice in the room saying it. They're going to do it for us, right? And watch Zoom and Teams fight each other, right? And watch out for Google. I mean, I'm sure they're going to do something too. So I think that's going to be a big thing for us. So
you said a mouthful, Dana. That is also true. I see the fight. A couple of years ago, someone said, is it going to be a fight between Polycom and Cisco for video? And I said, no. I said, I said it was going to be Google and Amazon at that point. That was in 2013. I said, I think that's where the fight is going to be. And I'm not exactly accurate, but Google is in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And, Microsoft Teams and Zoom. Now Zoom came out of nowhere, and that's where the fight's going to be.
Yep. And on the Crestron device, I really like what Crestron is doing is to simplify their approach, and I mean simplify by execution. Deploying the systems has to change quite a bit on their side of it, and doing these approaches where they are, because when they bring intelligence to the room, they enable our displays to do more. For example, is the room clean? Right. That's a huge question these days that does play towards us because we are a touch screen, right? Therefore, if we are part of the normal cleaning and people know it is clean, then they know that they feel comfortable around that. So in any case, we're definitely excited about it and our partnership with them as well. So.
Let me ask an overarching question as we wrap up here. Any of you, the three, can take this. I take Dana's point about there being a fight between Teams and Zoom and Google. There was a report out about a year ago, a UC industry analyst. There's somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 soft codecs on the market. If that's the case, if there are 250 options, why is the fight only between those three?
I think Charmaine said it, especially on the team side of it. It's integrated in Office 365. I mean, that's the problem with anybody else outside of Office 365 is that users have to adopt something different. And so, and Zoom has done a really good job to penetrate into that space, not in the O365 land, to Charmaine's point, but in the land of UC or collaboration. And we just know the horsepower of Cisco and Google. I mean, they're not going to lay down inside. The others have to then fight amongst that. And I think we just kind of follow the biggest volume and the numbers and users. And I mean, you're right though, Tim. There's probably a top 10 list you could probably call out.
Probably.
Yep, that are all there. And yeah, so that's why they come to mind for us in that regard. So
Yeah, I used to partner with Microsoft a lot when I was in the IT UC space 10 years ago. And they always said to us, we own the desktop. That was Microsoft's thing. We own the desktop, we own the desktop. And then the desktop started going away and people started using smartphones and we were like, now what? And then 365 came out and they said, oh no, we got that. We're gonna do some things. We're gonna create Skype and put it in the cloud and interoperate, and they own that. So that infrastructure for enterprises, they still own that. Even whether it's on the desk or in the smart device in the cloud, it can translate over both. And the enterprises, most of them have that. So Microsoft, out of the 250 soft clients, Microsoft has had that client for a very long time, like a very long time. And whether it was in live meeting, OTS, I mean, it's gone through so many changes, Skype for Business, now Teams. They put it into different solution packages and sets, but they're still there. They're still in the background. And Google, and that's why I said Amazon at one point. Amazon is Amazon Web Services. The guys that are still in the background operating things, these products, Zoom came from the guys who made WebEx, right? They gave WebEx, Cisco got WebEx, he went off, he created Zoom. So a lot of Zoom is mirroring, has those protocols that WebEx had, but he's doing it, he enhanced a couple of things to make it easier for people to access other, Cisco WebEx wasn't always. So it's always, these products have kind of always been in the background, familiar to most people in the enterprise. So I think the reason why the fight is with these guys is because of the familiarity and the fact they've always been there in the background at all times. So it's familiarity, it's ease, and it interoperates, better. They know on the client, the technology managers, they know how to work with these types of products. They're there. So we'll go with what we know.
wasn't there a saying for a while that says no one ever gets fired for buying Microsoft?
Exactly. There was a saying of that too.
Close enough, Dana. I mean, Microsoft, IBM, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, they own so much of the workflow. So, again, back when we were getting together and, Julian Phillips of Whitlock, now AVI SPL, used to talk a lot about, collaboration beyond just this, but it's about, digitizing workflows. And Microsoft already owns so much of the workflow from the client productivity software you build up to the cloud that they operate in. And so Teams got a leg up on that over 245 of the others.
Absolutely. All right. As I leave you with this one thing, I do want to point out the one company we didn't mention as a player and all that, and that's Cisco. And for a company who spent a fair amount of money 10 years ago to buy Tandberg, I find it interesting that they're there. They're just not one of the even WebEx isn't. So
can I add to that?
Yeah.
Thought? Well, the reason why is when you buy something that you're not used to doing, and you restructure yourself to the people who actually knew how to do it, and either say, okay, we don't need you anymore, or we're going to put you somewhere else. That thing that you bought is there amongst people who are not used to working with it, right? So that was the story with Cisco acquiring Tandberg. They bought Tandberg out. Cisco was never really used to doing video. That wasn't their thing. Wasn't their thing, but they wanted to make it their thing in buying Tandberg. But that's great. But if you do that, you have to keep the people who built it to help you progress it. And if you don't do that, then you kind of, it's there, it works. People still have Cody bridges to this day, stuff like that. But it's not progressing and it's not keeping up with the competition, new things. It's not elevating. No one is moving it along because there's no one there that knows how to do that because that's not their forte. So I think that would be my, I saw that and I was like, we're gonna let this timber group go. I'm like, yeah, don't want to do that, but they did it anyway. So yeah, it's interesting. And I think that's why that happened. And it hurts. It hurt them a little bit, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely, we will. All right, thank you all so much. Mr. Grimes, thank you, sir. How do people get a hold of you?
The best way to find me these days is on the LinkedIns. I use that a lot for communicating with people and for going back and forth. So you look for me there. It's LinkedIn, Brad Grimes. It's easy to find.
All right, very good. Charmaine, thank you so much as always.
Thank you. And Charmaine Torella, LinkedIn, the Twitterverse, and Verix. Also, you can find me at ctorella@verix.com.
All right. You can also, if you are a member of the Diversity Council from AVIXA, you can also hang out with her. I think next week is when we have a thingy. Yeah.
Yes, that is true.
Well, by the time you hear this, it'll be this week. So get on the ball there, kids. Dana, nice to see you on my show. Finally, I've interviewed you several times on different things, but finally on my show. So thanks so much. And how do people get a hold of you or Avocor?
Yeah, same thing as the other people here on LinkedIn. Obviously, I'm a big user on LinkedIn. Don't do any other social channels other than that one. But email, good old email, dana.corey@avocor.com. Welcome anytime to chat and reach out. Thanks again, Tim.
Good old email. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. For Tim Albright, don't follow me on the Twitters because at this point in the season, I am screaming at the Twitters about the Bears. That's all I got. That's it, because they stink. All right. But they're my Bears, so whatever. But go by the website if you would, please. AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. While you're there, please check out our sponsors. These are the folks that help you and help me bring you AVWeek and ResiWeek and all the others. Extron is one of those. Crestron is one of those. We thank them. Our annual awards process has begun. If you go to avnation.tv/AVNation Best of 2020 Awards and put dashes in between all of those or hyphens, you can get your hands on the nominations. This is how this works, just in case you haven't listened the last 3 or 4 years that we've done this. The month of December, you go by the website and you nominate anybody you want for any of those various processes and categories. My buddy Chris Netto said I should put in one about the best virtual event for 2020, and that seemed about the most 2020 thing I could do, so we did. So that is the only the new category we've got. But everything else is there. The best touch panel, not touch panel, but the best digital signage, education, technical support, as well as the AVNation AV Professional of the Year. So check that out. You can nominate whomever you want. You've got 3 nomination spots. And then somewhere on the 1st of January, we will put all of those folks together in a big pot. The top 8 will go into a bracket type system, and you'll get to vote on round 1 the first week, round 2 the second week, and the last 2 weeks will be the final round. So check all of that out and more at avnation.tv. It's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.